Hey guys, this is Mistress Nightmare here, and I'm so sorry I wasn't able to post any new videos for the past 2 weeks. I was currently in service training week for my job and getting everything ready for my first day of school for my bachelor's degree. I hope you guys forgive me for that. Anyway, I have been looking into reading the next few chapters of Love, Laughter, Insanity, a Laughing Jack love story, but sadly there's only 4 chapters of the story. I was really hoping that this will be a really long continuous story, but no, sadly there's only 4. So I hope you guys enjoy chapter 2 of Love, Laughter, Insanity, written by x-saviour-x. I'll leave a link to this person's story in the links in the description box below. Before we get started, please hit the like button, comment, subscribe to this channel if you guys want more creepypasta fanfictions out there. Also, if those who are interested in submitting different creepypastas that I have not read on my channel, please comment or message me through Instagram, so I would love to read different stories that are out there. Until then, let's get started. 10 years have passed, 10 years since. Joanna had last been in her hometown, 10 years since she last talked to her parents, to her friends. Apart from Sam and Tara, to Jack, he had been her imaginary friend, and yet, when she left, he had not followed. She asked Sam and Tara about it, and they mainly found it strange that how they all could, and the other children, and even some of the adults, could see him. Joanna had admitted it was a bit peculiar, but she simply set it aside. Now 18, Joanna was living in her own apartment, which wasn't the most pleasant, but it had a roof over her head at least, living in a different town. It hadn't been the best way to spend those 10 years, but the people were friendly, so that was a good thing. She even made some friends, yet even now she wondered where Jack had gone. The ringing of her cell phone resting in her jacket pocket stretched her out of her thoughts as she pulled out and looked at the caller ID. Before answering, which made a smile appear on her lips. "Hey Sam," she said to the female on the other line. "And here's a sign of relief." "Good, I caught you on your break," Sam said exhaustedly. And Joanna blinked, realizing where she was. She was sitting outside on a chair that was sat before a table with an umbrella in front of the monster cafe, her job. Looking in, though, through the front window at the clock on the wall, Joanne sees it was 1:23, meaning her break would be over in about 7 minutes. Coughing caused her to pay attention once more to the woman in front of the line. "Oh yeah, well, I just got a few minutes, so what's up?" Joanna stated as she started the conversation, confused why Sam would call her. "Not much, but me and Tara got some great news," the female squealed, causing Joanna to pull the phone slightly away from her ear and shaking her eardrums. Setting it back closer, she cocked an eyebrow if her friend couldn't see it. "And what is that?" she asked, confused, with a slight hint of suspicion and hesitation. It wasn't that she didn't trust the two, it's just, okay, she didn't fully trust them, but judging how excited Sam was being, but mostly good. "Me and Tara are on our way to your new hometown. Right now." Joanna, in the midst of taking a sip of her soda, brought it back out, widening her blue eyes at the news. "What?" As the long black hair woman exclaimed loudly, causing a strange look from the folks that passed her. She gulped and listened as Sam began speaking. "Yeah, we're almost there. We're taking you back to our hometown with us in a few days. Another spit take. But Sam, I have a job. I can't leave so sudden. Plus, who's gonna be taking care of my house while I'm gone? A sigh could be heard on the other line. We got it all planned out, okay? Plus, Tara's really calling your boss to let him know about you going on a vacation. Wait, what? Oh, gotta go. We're almost there to the cafe. After the sentence, all Joanne could hear was an irritating ring that before freezing at the spot, shaking her head. Sighing, the female lifted her head to her forehead and rubbed it. What did I get myself into? I can't believe you two dragged me along all this, said the black-haired woman, yelling while sitting in an SUV with her arms folded as she pouted like a 5-year-old. Her two friends were in the front seat laughing at her, each getting a poisonous glare. Calm down, Joanna. It's not that bad. Plus, we can show you to our apartment, so settle down and relax, Sam giggled, looking back with her forest green hue at an angry person. Joanna sighed and shaking her head and peered out the window at the sign as they all passed the freeway, drifting back off to her thoughts. She wondered what happened since she had left. Remembering what happened to John and Carol, she shivered up, hoping that weren't any more bad things. Her mind soon trailed back to the black shadow. It was tall, with a look like lanky arms, with suspenders, with black feathers upon its shoulders. She wondered who it was. It was slowly beginning to turn. Just as a cone nose shaved, so did one of its eyes. They were soulless. The iris faded into a ghostly white with the pupil slit. Black lips, smile carved into white face, sharp teeth gleaming dangerously at her. It's the eyes that stayed on Joanna. Its scary grin widened at her. Joanna? Its voice called out, sounding like a male's, but only above a whisper. Joanna stared fearfully, wondering who the stranger was. And why did he look so familiar? Joanna. His voice increased in loudness as she blinked. The image slowly faded away. Joanna! Joanna jumped. Her eyes shot open, breathing heavily as she looked at her two friends that were both standing at the near open door next to her. Brows cocked in concern, Joanna blinked at them, not realizing that she drifted to sleep. Then scratching the back of her head sheepishly. What is it? She asked the redhead and brunette. We're here, Tara's answered, turning curiously why, if afraid of something would happen if she wasn't watching. And the heads turned to the trunk to open it and grab Joanna's bags. Sam stayed put, though, worried echoed onto her face as her green eyes watched Joanna closely. Are you okay? She asked the black-haired woman, who climbed out of the car. Joanna peered back at her and nodded half-heartedly. She really wasn't sure. She just had seen. Sam noticed the iffy attention Joanna was making, so she settled her hand on the black-haired female's shoulder and slightly comforting her with a smile on her face. Joanna smiled back, shrugging. Turning away from Sam, the two looked at Tara as she was carrying Joanna's black suitcase up to the house before them. Wait. Joanna's dropped her mouth slightly as her eyes widened at the all too familiar building before her. It was her house, her old house. Confusion taking over, Joanna looked at Sam for answers. The redhead shrugged and chuckled nervously with a sheepish grin. Tara and me thought it would make you feel better if you stayed in your old house. Plus, we don't have any room, something that we didn't think through. She answered, turning to lead the other woman inside. As they entered, Joanna's eyes widened even more. Everything was still the same. The living room, the kitchen, the hallway, everything. Tara, who just entered with the second bag and settled them with a smirk at Joanna's gobsmacked stare. We cleaned it up for ya. Didn't need you to sleep on a mess, did we? All that grin caused her concern to lower her eyes from the blue-eyed female. What mess? She asked, wondering what Tara was talking about. Come to think of it, where were her parents? Sam and Tara blinked owlishly at their companion in shock. You mean you didn't know? Sam asked, only to gain a head shake, seeing the still shocked, and quickly turned to sorrow. As the other two looked at each other, sickened feeling to begin to grow in the pits of Joanna's stomach as she faced the two. Their eyes turned to her as Sam shuffled her feet and looking down while Tara spoke. Joanna, I think you should sit down. They what? Joanna screamed in horror, resting on her face. Sam stared down at her feet as the three friends all sat there on the couch in the blue wallpaper clad living room. Tara scratched the back of her head, not sure to tell Joanna everything. The killer that murdered Jonah and Carol. They got your parents, Joanna, Sam muttered. Joanna stared at the wall, processing the information as tears slowly formed in her eyes. How could no one have told her? Why hadn't anyone told her? She was their child. She should have known. It happened after you left, Tara said with the voice breaking. Joanna hesitantly turned to her and began to shake. Really? She stuttered, sniffling as her tears began to slowly roll down one by one down her cheek. The other two nodded, either looking at her with fear and tears up as well. It happened to everyone, Joanna, Sam whispered, shaking her head, causing Joanna to look at her in concern. Everyone? Sam nodded, and Joanna understood immediately. All their childhood friends. Bursting finally into sobs, Joanna wept, pulling her legs while wrapping her arms around them, crying into her knees. Sam and Tara both looked at their friend, hugging her, the two crying silently with their childhood friend. 2 hours passed since then. Sam and Tara had left. Now it was 9:16, and Joanna had slowly made up the stairs, looking down the hallway. Everything was still the same. Walking forward, Joanna stopped at her old bedroom. Breathing in deeply, she gripped the knob, turning it. The door squeaked from the years that had passed on. Joanna stepped in. Everything was like the rest of the house, everything sitting on the edge of her bed. Joanna stared at the purple walls ahead of her, her eyes glossy from crying earlier, and blinked with no emotions. Sighing deeply, she laid back onto the bed, her legs still hanging off, and shutting her eyes, hoping for a peaceful sleep that maybe take over. As wanted, Joanna had drifted into her dreams about 3 hours later, jumping as a startled sound banged. She jumped off the bed, quickly got to her feet and looked towards the door. Loud noises seemed to be coming downstairs. She quickly secured out the room and trotted downstairs, her eyes widened and gas leaving her lips as she reached the last step, the woman freezing in her tracks. Shocked in seeing both of her suitcase and duffel bag were unzipped. All of them of her belongings were thrown around carelessly. What the hell? Joanna whispered as she slowly made her way over to the jumbled clothes over the necessary, peeking around behind her for the culprit. Bending down, the woman began to clean up the mess, refolding the clothes and setting everything neatly. The 18-year-old jumped back onto her feet and her eyes shot wide open up to the stairs. The sound of scratching was heard. Furrowing her eyebrows, Joanna hesitantly began to make her way upstairs, afraid of knowing what was causing this. She opened the door and, taking a deep breath, and opened her orbs once more, hoping at least to startle the culprit. But no one was there. Her eyes narrowed even more as she searched the room. Nothing had been moved, and sure she would have caught someone before they got a chance to hide into the closet or underneath the bed. Looking around, she stepped in more, searching for what caused that loud sound. Her heart stopped. Stopping at the wall straight across from the bed were scratches on the wall written. It was writing, and Joanne made out what it said. "Why are you in her house?" was etched onto the purple walls, and Joanna could feel her heart skip a beat. "Who's there? Who left this?" she called, her eyes frantically moving for hidden emotion for the culprit. Silent stillness, looking back towards the words. Joanna gulped, unsure of what it meant or who or what left it. Maybe Sam and Tara would know. I would ask them tomorrow. With that, Joanna turned cautiously to her old bed and walked up and crawled underneath the blankets. Seeing that she had grown, she was a bit bigger than its height. Maybe it was meant for the bed, but it was still comfortable. She couldn't complain. As the woman shut her eyes, she slowly fell into slumber. A shadow crept up to the bed, peering down at her, a menacing smile growing on their face, and they exclaimed, the person with a dark chuckle, "Good night, my lollipop."